They don't talk about Evan anymore. Not because they forgot him, but because something makes them want to forget. He was just a transfer student, quiet, observant, a little too curious. Maybe he noticed things others ignored, like the stairwell. No one used between floors 2 and 3. The one that always felt colder. The one with the echo that didn't match your footsteps. And then, the girl, she never spoke, never moved, just stood there, smiling on the 8th step. Evan was the only one who kept asking questions about the missing names, the extra steps, the phone calls at 3:13 a.m., the photos that didn't line up. He even found her in a class picture from 1997, smiling the exact same way, unchanged, undisturbed. They say the school erased him, that now his name isn't in any roster, his locker's empty, and the teachers shrugged like he was never there. But some of us remember, faintly, like a dream you're not sure you had. And once in a while, when you walk by that stairwell, you still feel it. The cold, the pressure behind your eyes, the sense that someone is smiling just a little too close. Some say Evan traded places with her. Others think he smiled back and that was enough. But whatever you believe, don't linger on the 8th step. And whatever you do, don't smile back. Part 1. The 13th stairwell. If you've ever transferred to a new school mid-semester, you know the quiet kind of weird that clings to everything, like the lockers that still have someone else's stickers on them, or how people stop talking just a beat too long when you walk by. For Evan, it wasn't the lockers, it was the stairwell, the one no one ever used. It was squeezed between the 2nd and 3rd floor, tucked behind a dull metal fire door that didn't match the rest of the building. At first, Evan thought it was just a maintenance route, till he saw a kid open the door, walk in, and come out a second later, looking different. Not scared, just quieter, paler, like something had scraped the edge of his thoughts. Evan tried it a few days later. The stairwell wasn't locked. He pulled the heavy door open and immediately noticed 3 things. The temperature dropped by at least 10 degrees. The lights were dimmer than everywhere else in school, and the sound of his own breathing bounced back at him, distorted, like someone else was breathing just behind his shoulder. 16 steps. That's how many there were. He counted, because he couldn't not count, and halfway down, he saw her. A girl, maybe his age, standing perfectly still on the 8th step. She was smiling. Not a grin, not a smirk, just a soft, polite smile, like the kind you give a stranger passing you in a hallway. But something about her posture felt off, rigid. Her hands were clasped in front of her skirt, fingers laced tight. She wore the standard school uniform navy blazer, plaid skirt, but her socks were wrong, outdated, the kind they hadn't used in years. Evan froze. She didn't move. "Hey," he said. Just that, no answer. Her head tilted slightly, the smile never wavering. He blinked, and she was gone. He ran up the stairs so fast he nearly tripped. Back in the hallway, kids walked past without a glance. The world felt normal, again to normal, almost staged. That night, Evan dreamed about the stairwell, or maybe it was a memory. He was on the 8th step, looking down, and the girl was below him now, looking up. Same smile, only this time her mouth moved. She whispered something, but the words were swallowed by static, like a broken cassette tape trying to rewind the next day. Evan casually asked a classmate, Maddie, if there was something weird about the stairwell between the 2nd and 3rd floor. "What stairwell?" she said. "You know, behind the grey fire door. There's no door there. He walked her to it after lunch. The door was gone, no joke. Where it had been was just painted. Wall, but the cold was still there. If he placed his hand flat on the bricks, the chill crept up his arm like slow ink. That night, he found an old school map online. There it was, clearly labelled, Emergency Stairwell 3B, right between floors 2 and 3. Evan started watching, waiting. He skipped classes just to sit nearby. After 3 days, he saw it happen again. A janitor opened a door that wasn't there yesterday and wheeled in a mop bucket. When Evan ran over, the door was gone, but a faint smell of bleach lingered in the air. He wasn't crazy. The next time he saw her, it was from above. He was on the 3rd floor, peeking through a narrow pane of glass in a different stairwell. Across the gap, through a grimy window on the stairwell wall, he saw movement. The 8th step, the girl smiling. This time she raised one hand. Not waving, just lifting it slowly, palm out, like a frozen frame in a VHS tape. Evan took a picture. When he looked at the image later, the stairwell was empty, but in the reflection on the glass there she was. Over the next week, Evan tried, telling 3 people, his homeroom teacher, the guidance counselor, and the assistant principal. All 3 of them smiled too quickly, nodded too tightly, and changed the subject. Something about the silence felt rehearsed. On Friday, Evan opened his locker and found a sticky note that wasn't his. In neat handwriting, "Don't smile back." That night, his dream returned. This time, she was closer. Her face was still, smile unchanged, but her eyes were different. Watching, focused, and her lips moved again. 2 words. This time, he heard them clearly. 13 steps. Evan woke up, gasping at school. He counted again. There were 16. He went back that afternoon, after final bell, waited. The hallway was empty, no cameras. He opened the fire. Dorrit was there. Aganan stepped inside. He counted as he descended. 1, 2, 3. His breath fogged in the cold. 4, 5, 6. He paused. 7, his hand brushed the rail. 8, she was there. Same step. Same smile. 9, she didn't blink. 10, Evan, single quotes as knees shook. 11, the smile widened. Just a bit. 12, he couldn't breathe. 13, she opened her mouth. But this time, so did he. Evan turned and ran. He didn't remember getting back to the hallway. All he remembered was the sound, soft, rhythmic, like footsteps in snow behind him. Later, at home, he checked his phone. One new photo. Taken at 3:13 p.m., he hadn't touched his camera. It was a blurry image of the stairwell. The girl wasn't in it, but he was, standing on the 8th step, smiling. Part 2. The student not on any list would think in a school with less than 600 students. You'd eventually recognize every face in the hallway. But Evan was now dead sure that he'd seen someone who wasn't supposed to be there. He hadn't told anyone yet. Not after what happened last time. The girl on the stairwell, still smiling, on the 8th step. Every time, it wasn't just that her name wasn't in the yearbook. That would have been easy to write off as some clerical error, or maybe she transferred mid-semester. But Evan had gone further than that. He checked the homeroom rosters taped beside each classroom door. He scrolled through the school's website. He even asked the student office secretary casually, as if he were trying to remember a classmate's name. Brown hair, Wears a grey sweater. Kind of. Just stands around the middle stairs a lot. The secretary looked up briefly, then turned back to her keyboard. Doesn't sound familiar. A pause. You sure she's a student here? That pause. That odd, forced pause. Like she had something else to say, but decided not to dot it. Stuck in Evan's brain longer than it should have. So he went deeper. After school on Thursday, when most students were already heading home or out to practice, Evan slipped into room 213, the room with the filing cabinets. Technically, it was the guidance counselor's shared office, but on Thursdays, the blinds were always shut and the lights dimmed. They had some kind of workshop across campus. Lucky break. He pulled out the file drawer labeled student grade. Reports 9 to 12. The folders were neat, tabbed by last name. He wasn't even sure what he was looking for exactly. Just maybe a face, a name, a clue. Something that matched the girl who never blinked on the stairs. He flipped through alphabetically. Bailey, Barker, Barton, and then there was a folder with the tab blacked out. Just Sharpie, thick, messy, rushed, not blank, redacted, inside only. One sheet, a grade sheet, with most fields scratched out. But there, near the bottom, written in small, typed font, was a single note. No longer belongs here. No name, no ID, no GPA, nothing else. Evan stared at the words. The phrasing sent a weird chill down his back. It wasn't withdrawn or transferred, not even expelled, just that, no longer belongs. It felt like a sentence. He snapped a picture with his phone and shut the file quickly. Refiled it, closed the drawer. That night, he couldn't sleep. Every time he turned off the lamp, he imagined her face, smiling, unblinking, hovering just above his bed. On the 8th step, the next day, Evan tried asking one of his teachers. Mr. Gallows, who taught sophomore English, was young, chill, and usually down to entertain weird questions. Evan waited until after class when the others filed out. Hey, can I ask something kinda strange? Mr. Gallows laughed. Strange is my favorite genre. There's this girl. She's always standing in the stairwell between 2 and 3. You ever notice her? The teacher's smile didn't fade, but it paused, like someone forgetting how to act natural. No clue who you're talking about, he said, too quickly. Must be seeing shadows. Evan frowned. She smiles a lot. Doesn't move. Brown hair, grey sweater, always around 8th step. This time, Mr. Gallows didn't respond right away. He picked up his coffee mug, took a long sip, then started stacking books. Sometimes we imagine things when we're under stress, he said slowly. New school, new faces. Our brain fills in gaps. Suggestion is a powerful thing. That's when Evan knew. He knew Mr. Gallows had seen her. He was just pretending he hadn't. Later that day, during lunch, Evan walked back to the stairwell. It was empty, silent. He climbed slowly, counted steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He paused. Step 8. Cold air, even though the hallways were warm. No girl, but something was there. A piece of paper folded and tucked between the cracks. He unfolded it, one line typed. Stop digging. She notices when you look too hard. He dropped it, backed down the stairs. Someone had written that. Someone who knew. That night, as he was brushing his teeth. Evan glanced into the mirror and, for a split second, thought he saw her behind him. Not a reflection, not even moving. Just there. He spun around. nothing, but the bathroom door was open now. He swore he had closed it. At 2:13 a.m., his phone buzzed. An airdrop request. No name. Just a blurry image. It was the stairwell, taken from above, and she was on the 8th step, looking up, right into the camera. Evan didn't sleep again. He deleted the photo. It came back, and this time the file was renamed 8th_step_one of us, MOV. Part 3. More steps every time. They always told him the stairwell had 13 steps. That was just how the building was made, according to a teacher who didn't look up from her coffee. Old architecture. Nothing strange about it. Even the plaque. Above the stairwell landing still read floor 2.5, a leftover from some half-renovation decades ago. Everyone just accepted it as a quirk of the building, like flickering hallway lights or the way the ceiling creaked when no one was above. But Evan counted them, because Evan didn't just walk stairs, he watched them, listened to them. He noticed the change. Yesterday there were 16. Today there were 21. And something was breathing. It started when Evan forgot his backpack on the 3rd floor. It was late, a quiet Thursday evening. Everyone else had left after drama club, and the janitor's wet mop signs were still standing like sentries down the hallway. Evan didn't like staying after dark, but his phone was dead, and he didn't feel like coming back early before homeroom. He climbed the stairs up from the 1st floor, not really paying attention at first, but by the time he reached the landing, between floor 2 and 3, his breath hitched. Cold air rushed up his arms as if he'd stepped into a freezer. It wasn't winter yet, but his skin pulled tight anyway. 1 step, 2, 3. He was counting again. A nervous habit. 4, 5, 6. That's when he stopped. He knew the landing should be near 7, 8, 9, 10. Still no landing. He paused on the 11th step. The light above him buzzed faintly, casting a long, crooked shadow from the handrail. He looked up and finally saw the landing, but it was further than it should have been. Much further. He frowned. That's not right. 12, 13, 14. The air was heavier now, like breathing through wet cloth. He clutched the railing tighter. His foot hesitated above the 15th step. That's when he heard it giggle. Not loud, not playful, something light and small, like a breath that had learned to laugh. It came from above, maybe below, maybe. Both daughters' eyes darted up the stairwell, then down. No one. He took one more step. 16. The giggle stopped, back in his dorm. Evan couldn't stop thinking about it. He replayed the climb in his head like a broken song. 16 steps. A giggle, cold air. No lights burned out. No students in the building. He tried rationalizing it. Maybe the giggle was a pipe noise. Maybe he miscounted. But that didn't explain the top of the stairs being so far away, and it didn't explain why. When he passed a group of students near the vending machines later that evening and mentioned the stairs, they fell quiet. Every single one of them, you counted. One finally asked, his voice a little too careful. Yeah, why? No one answered. They just looked at each other and slowly walked away, like he'd just admitted to whispering to the walls. The next morning, Evan arrived early. Too early. The sun hadn't fully risen, and the hallways were still dim. He stood at the bottom of the stairwell again. Looked up. It looked normal, just old. He began counting. 1, 2, 3. The lights buzzed softly overhead. A locker door somewhere in the hallway clanged shut on its own. 4, 5, 6. He walked slower. This time, 7, 8, 9. The landing should be visible now. He looked up, nothing. Still stairs, 10, 11, 12. He tightened his hoodie drawstring. 13, 14, 15. He felt the cold. Again, 16, 17. The echoing silence stretched. 18, 19. His foot hovered. 20. That's when he heard it again, giggle, soft and wrong. Like something was practicing how to sound human, but hadn't quite figured out the timing. He spun around. The stairwell behind him was gone. No floor below, no floor above, just stairs. Forever he was surrounded by cracked white walls and rusted handrails that coiled into the dark like veins. The fluorescent lights above no longer buzzed. They were just ... off. Evan's chest tightened. He started running down fast. 20-1, 2019. He counted backward. 18, 17. His steps echoed like thunder in a cave. 16, 15, 14. No landing. Still no exit. 13, 12. Still just stairs. His breath was ragged now, legs burning. 11, 10, 9. He wanted to scream, but the air was thick. Too thick for sound. 8, 7. Still no bottom. Still no top. He tripped on step 6. Hit the handrail, skin scraped. His flashlight keychain popped off and clattered down. Clink, clink, clinky, echoing endlessly into the dark. When he sat up, the giggle came again. Closer, he turned his head and saw her, not above, not below, on the wall. Crawling sideways like gravity didn't matter. Her smile was too wide, too steady. Her eyes weren't blinking, just watching. She reached the 8th step, stopped, tilted her head. Almost she whispered. Evan woke up. In the nurse's office, they said a janitor found him collapsed in the stairwell. They said maybe it was exhaustion, or low blood sugar, or dehydration. But no one really looked concerned. When he asked how many stairs there were, how many between floors, 2 and 3, they just stared blankly. I think 13. The nurse muttered. But when Evan limped back that afternoon and counted them again, there were 20-4, and the 8th step had a faint scuff mark right in the shape of a bare heel print. Part 4. The class photo. Evan found the photo by accident. It was tucked behind a stack of old yearbooks in the school library's archive room, a place no one visited unless they were avoiding someone or something. The room smelled like mold and dusted paper, and the lights flickered in that way that made shadows feel alive. He wasn't even looking for it. He'd come in to research old blueprints of the stairwell, hoping to make sense of what happened earlier that week. 24. Steps, a voice, a bare heel print, a girl crawling on the wall. But the librarian said the building. Blueprints had been lost in a flood. Most of the old records didn't survive, she muttered, barely looking up from her crossword puzzle. So he wandered instead. That's when he noticed a wooden filing drawer slightly open, jammed at an angle like someone had pulled it too hard. Inside were faded folders, photos, and stacks of laminated class pictures going back decades. He flipped through them absent-mindedly. 2004, 1999, 1998, and then he saw it. The 1997 class photo. It wasn't labeled like the others. Just a yellowed sheet with a single caption in the corner. Class 2B. The photo showed maybe 20 students, lined up on the front steps of the school. Their faces were washed out from time, but still visible. Most smiled in that awkward, forced way teens do when someone yells, say cheese. All except one. She stood at the very edge, half shadowed, half seen. A girl with jet black hair in loose braids, head tilted ever so slightly, mouth curled in a smile that looked wrong. Not big, not toothy, just a steady, fixed expression. Too fixed, and her eyes. They weren't looking at the camera, they were looking at him. Evan blinked and turned. The photo to the left. Her face followed. He tilted it to the right, still staring, like a painting in an old haunted house. His hand trembled. Slightly, he set the photo on the table, then glanced around to see if anyone else noticed. The archive room was silent. The librarian at the front desk hadn't moved in 10 minutes. He leaned closer. Something was off about her clothes. The other students wore matching uniforms, navy blue blazers, white shirts, striped ties, but she wore something else entirely. A darker skirt, almost grey-green. A white-collared dress with sleeves buttoned to the wrist, like something out of a different era. Almost like a boarding school uniform from the 1950s. But it was 1997. Evan picked up the photo, again an squinted. The longer he stared, the more distorted the smile seemed, like it widened slightly the moment he made eye contact. He blinked and shook his head. It was just an old photo. Light tricks, dust, nothing more. But then he saw something else. Her shoes weren't touching the ground. They hovered, barely an inch. Maybe less, but enough. Evan dropped the photo. It hit the table, face down, for a moment. He just stood there, not breathing. Then he forced himself to flip it back over. Now she was standing in the middle of the group. "Nope," he muttered, stepping back. He grabbed the rest of the stack. 1996, 1995, 1994. In each one, she was there, always at the edge, or the back row, or behind a taller student, but never gone, and always smiling, always looking straight at whoever held the photo. He checked. The names listed below the pictures. They all had first and last names, except her no name, just a dash, a gap, like someone had intentionally left it blank. Evan shoved the stack back into the drawer and slammed it shut, heart pounding. He didn't want to look anymore, but he couldn't leave it either back in his dorm. He Googled the class rosters from 1997. Nothing, no student records, for to be no yearbook entry. No digital footprint at all. It was like the class existed only in that one photo, and her. She wasn't in any school database, no alumni page, no social media, not even in archived newspaper, photos of school events. He opened the image on his phone. One more time, and this time she blinked. Not a trick of the light, a deliberate, slow blink. Then she tilted her head the other way and smiled wider. Evan dropped his phone. The screen cracked, but the image stayed, her eyes still locked on his. He turned the phone face down, and from the hallway outside his dorm door, he heard a soft giggle. Part 5. The ones who've seen her the post had no date, no author, no tags, just a title. She doesn't leave you, just trade places. Evan found it at 3:14 a.m., wedged between a forum thread on paranormal events and an archived school club blog from 2002. He wasn't even sure what he'd searched to end up there. Something like smiling girl, stairwell urban legend, or students who vanished from Jefferson High. The key words kept shifting the deeper he dug. Like the internet itself didn't want him finding it until it did. The blog was stripped bare. One single post. No photos, no sidebar, no comment section. Just a few hundred words and a sentence that made his stomach go cold. If you've seen her, I hope it's not too late. She doesn't leave you, just trade places. It didn't say who the writer was, but the writing felt young, like someone his age, maybe high school, and scared, terrified. Evan leaned back in his chair, staring at the line. Something about it scratched at the inside of his skull. Trade places? With who? He took a screenshot, then another, and just in case, he copied the text into a Google Doc and emailed it to himself. But when he clicked, refreshed just to be sure, was gone. Page not found. He wasn't surprised, not really. That week, Evan stopped going straight home after class. Instead, he spent hours in the library's dusty archives, behind a creaky folding divider that smelled like old textbooks and industrial cleaner. He wasn't supposed to be back there, at least not alone, but he'd figured out the cart trick. Keep a half-full book cart nearby and act like you're shelving. People ignored you, like you weren't even there. He started a notebook, labeled her. Inside, he jotted every name, every incident, every yearbook photo that seemed off. But most of all, he looked for those who might have seen her. The smiling girl on the stairs. He found 7 students. 7 who had, at one point, written or whispered something that matched. For transferred schools abruptly, to withdrew mid-semester. 1. Just disappeared. That one's name was Rachel Marquez, sophomore, 2012. Debate team, track, honors bio, then dash gone. She didn't even have a withdrawal slip. Her file just ended, like someone stopped typing halfway through a sentence. Evan found a photo of her in a 2011 yearbook. She was in the front row, wearing a Jefferson hoodie and flashing a peace sign. Behind her, half out of frame, was another student blurred, but Evan swore he recognized that grin. The girl, the one on the stairwell. He asked Ms. Carlyle, the librarian, if she remembered Rachel. Rachel, who, she said, eyes already drifting back to her computer, he clarified. Showed the photo. She blinked. Oh, that girl, right. She moved, didn't she, out west? Do you know where? No idea, she said. And then, quietly, some people are better forgotten. That night, Evan couldn't sleep. The photo lingered in his mind, the blurred face behind Rachel. The impossible smile, that exact same curve he'd seen in the stairwell. Not just a smile, but an impression, like a wax model imitating happiness. He dreamed of stairs, of descending, of the girl's voice echoing off the walls, soft and humming, like a song without words. The next morning, he got to school early and made a beeline for the old guidance office records. He'd overheard that the files before 2005 were still kept in physical cabinets, stored in the basement near the boiler room. He found Rachel's file, or what should have been her file. Instead, he found a manila folder marked on Marquez Hold, in red ink. Inside, a single post-it note, transferred to alternate program, do not pursue, and beneath that, she was smiling, even when she screamed. Evan backed away from the cabinet. The hallway lights flickered. Later that day, he tried Googling. Rachel again. Her social profiles were gone. No mention on the school website, no photos, no posts, no footprint except one. A broken blog post, archived. She doesn't leave you, just trade places. He opened his notebook and circled Rachel's name 3 times. Then he added one more beneath it, his own, just in case. He was walking toward the library when he passed a seniors whispering in the hallway. Double quotes, ... "The girl in the stairwell," one said. Evan stopped. "What did you say?" They froze. The taller one narrowed his eyes. "Forget it." "No, please." "What girl?" The other laughed, but it was nervous. "Dude, it's just a joke." "Urban legend," Evan pressed. "Do you believe it?" A long pause. Then, "I used to, until Kevin disappeared." Kevin Wu, freshman, 2 years ago. Real quiet kid. Said he saw someone smiling at him on the stairs. Next week, he was gone. No call, no email. Family just ... left. And no one said anything. The taller senior shrugged. "No one talks about her. We just don't." "Why not?" "Because," he said, eyes cold now, "what if that's what she wants?" That night, Evan didn't dream. But when he woke up, his notebook was open on his desk, and his name, the one he'd written under Rachel's, had been crossed out in pencil in neat, precise letters just below it. "Now she's yours." Part 6. Calls from nowhere. The first time Evan's phone rang at 3:13 a.m. He thought it was just a prank, or maybe a wrong number. He was half asleep, blinking against the pale blue glow of his phone screen. No caller ID, just the word unknown and the haunting silence before he answered. "Hello." There was a long pause, then a breathy whisper, barely audible. "You're standing on the wrong side." He hung up, heart thudding. The next morning, it felt like a dream. Something strange and disjointed that his brain had made up in the fog between waking and sleeping. He even laughed a little, brushing his teeth. Wrong side of what? He muttered to the mirror. But the next night, the phone rang again. 3:13 a.m. on the dot, same number, same voice. Only this time, the voice was a little louder, a little clearer. It sounded female, young, and eerily calm. "You're standing on the wrong side." He blocked the number. Of course he did. That's what anyone would do. But the night after that, it wasn't a cell number. It was a landline. Westbridge High Library, 5554031. His breath caught. That number, it was posted on the school's library doors. He passed it every day. But the library wasn't open at 3 a.m. It didn't even have an answering machine. He stared at the screen, finger hovering, torn between answering and throwing. The phone across the room, he answered. A breath, soft and close, like someone was standing inches from the phone. "You're standing on the wrong side." He didn't sleep after that. During lunch the next day, he asked Mrs. Cartwright, the librarian, if there was any chance someone could have used the library's landline in the middle of the night. She frowned. That phone's disconnected after hours. Only the front office can turn it on. "Why?" Evan shrugged, pretending he'd misread something. But her tone stayed in his ears the rest of the day. That night, he unplugged his phone, then shut it off completely. At exactly 3:13 a.m., his landline rang. The one in the hallway. The one he'd never used. He froze in bed, breath shallow. He hadn't even remembered that phone existed. It hadn't rung in years. Who even had his home number? It rang again. He got up. The air in the hallway felt colder than his room. He reached for the receiver, hand trembling. Picked it up, nothing. Then a faint sound, breathing, slow, measured. "You're standing on the wrong side." He dropped the phone, backed away, and then it started ringing again. This time, from his laptop. No joke, a pop-up message. "Incoming call from library archive. CRVIRV says." Evan slammed the lid shut. At school, he pulled aside Maya. She was the only person he trusted enough She also had a weird fascination with the school's unrecorded history, as she called it. "There's something going on," he whispered, "with the stairwell and maybe something else." Maya didn't laugh. Instead, her face paled. "You got a call, didn't you?" she asked. "At 3:13. He nodded slowly. "I found a forum," she said. "It's hidden, old, buried deep under layers of dead links. There's a thread titled, 'She's Always Watching.' A few posts mention the time, 3:13. One guy said, 'It's the moment she slipped through,'" who Evan asked. But Maya only shook her head. "They call her the girl in the stairwell. That's all I know." The next night, Evan sat in front of the stairwell, the one near the science wing, the same place he'd first seen the odd graffiti months ago. He brought a notebook, wrote the phrase down, "You're standing on the wrong side," then added, "Wrong side of what?" He waited. Nothing happened. No voice, no footsteps. Just the hum of the vending machine down the hall and the distant creaks of an old school settling. He got up to leave, but as he turned, he saw something drawn in Sharpie just behind the stairwell railing. A little girl's face, eyes wide, mouth stretched into a grin too wide to be normal. He blinked. It wasn't there before at 3:13 that night. His phone rang again, but this time, before the whisper, there was a second voice, a boy's voice. "Don't answer her." Then silence. Then the breathy girl again. "You're standing on the wrong side." He whispered back, "Then tell me what the right side is." The line went dead. Evan stopped sleeping properly. He started dreaming in static, woke up to faint scratching from under the floor. Every sound felt like it meant something. One morning, he found his mirror fogged up, though no shower had run. In the fog, someone had written, "Turn around." He told Maya everything. Showed her the mirror, the notes, the call logs. She was quiet for a long time, then said, "What if the wrong side isn't a direction? What if it's a role, a place she wants you to fill?" He stared at her. "Maybe," she continued, "she doesn't move on. Maybe she moves over. Maybe she calls someone, and someone else takes her place." He didn't want to ask who took the place of the caller, but that night, at 3:13 a.m., when the phone rang again, he picked it up and said nothing, only listened, and this time the voice didn't say anything. It just laughed. Part 7. The copy doesn't blink. It wasn't the fact that he saw himself fit, was that the copy didn't blink. Evan had always been a little jumpy after a bad night's sleep, and he hadn't been sleeping well lately. Between the strange calls, the photo, the stairwell girl, and everything else, his brain felt like it was vibrating. But that Thursday morning, something snapped into a wrong kind of focus. He was walking into Mr. Holloway's history class when he stopped, dead in the doorway. Because he was already there, his own back same denim jacket with a torn elbow, same forest green backpack with a faded NASA patch, sat 2 rows down, leaning slightly to the right, the way Evan always did. The hair, the posture, even the little silver ring on the right hand, all the same. But as Evan stood frozen in the doorway, the doppelganger turned and stared directly at him. The eyes were his, same greenish grey, but blank. No reaction, no raised eyebrows, no shock, just an unblinking stare that went on too long. Then, slowly, the other Evan turned back toward the front, as if nothing happened, and the class went on. No one else noticed. Mr. Holloway didn't blink. Neither did Jessica, beside the fake Evan. They just kept chatting, flipping pages, checking phones. It was as if Evan's presence in the doorway was invisible. Or maybe he wasn't the real one. His legs moved without permission. He backed out of the room, heart slamming against his ribs, and walked a long way round the science hall just to breathe. The air tasted wrong, too sharp, like the halls were exhaling with him. Back in the restroom, he splashed cold water on his face, stared at himself in the mirror. "Get it together," he mumbled, gripping the sides of the sink, his reflection. Mouthed the words slightly after he did. Just a second, but enough to freeze the breath in his throat. He whipped around. No one there, turned back. His reflection stared, expression blank. Still, and then it blinked. But Evan hadn't. He stumbled back and left the bathroom, not even drying his hands. Every step felt like it echoed too many times, like something was following him through his own footprints. That night, he checked the mirror again. He blinked repeatedly, forced it, made stupid faces. His reflection followed exactly until he didn't try. He just stared, and the reflection blinked again on its own. The next day, he tried to bring it up to Riley in the cafeteria. "Have you ever seen, like, someone who looked just like you, but they weren't you?" Riley looked up from her tray of fries, one brow raised, like a twin. "No. Like, you walk into a room and there's you. Already there, but you didn't walk in yet. You high right now, or just sleep deprived?" Evan tried to laugh. It came out more like a cough. "Forget it. Just a dream." She shrugged and went back to dipping her fries. The moment passed, but the feeling deemed, because when Evan walked past the art room later that day, he caught a glimpse through the tall glass windows. His double again, standing beside the class project board. Just standing, not talking, not participating, eyes aimed straight through the glass dot at Evan. No blinking dot, just that vacant stare again. And then the real kicker, Miss Howard called out, "Evan, are you coming in or not?" He looked at her, then back through the window. The other Evan was gone. That night, he didn't sleep, just stared at the ceiling. The next morning, he brought an old flip phone to school, one of those cheap backup ones his dad kept in the drawer for emergencies. He set it up to record himself in the mirror during third period when he'd sneak to the restroom. Later, in the library corner, he watched the clip at exactly 10:13 a.m. Evan looked away from the mirror in the video, but his reflection kept staringa full 5 seconds. Then it blinked and smiled. Evan slammed the phone shut and nearly threw up into the trash bin beside the desk. He wanted to scream, wanted to find someone to tell, but who? The school counselor who didn't believe in ghosts, his mum who worked 2 jobs and hadn't really looked at him in weeks, Riley who thought he was joking last time. He sat back down, hugging his arms, trying to breathe. From a nearby table, a girl laughed at a TikTok. Someone typed furiously. Pages flipped. Everything so normal it felt like a lie. He thought back to the blog post from that missing student, the one he'd found 2 nights ago. "She doesn't leave, you just trade places." Maybe it wasn't just about her. Maybe the smiling girl wasn't the only one who smiled too much. Maybe some doors opened both ways, and maybe, just maybe, Evan wasn't the only Evan anymore. Part 8. The smile that lives in mirrors. You ever notice how the nurse's office always smells like plastic gloves and quiet secrets? Like someone tried to scrub away something they didn't want to talk about. Evan noticed it, especially that Thursday morning when his head wouldn't stop throbbing and the buzzing in his ear had returned like a fly trapped behind his left eye. "Just lie down for a bit," Nurse Darlene said, without really looking at him. She was already halfway into paperwork, the kind that looked older than the walls. He lay back on the vinyl cot, the paper crinkling under him, and stared at the ceiling. It was tiled and off-white, dotted with the occasional dead bug trapped in the lighting. But something about the way the mirror across the room angled caught his eye. The full-length mirror was built into the corner cabinet. It wasn't particularly clean, smudged with fingerprints, streaked like it had been wiped half-heartedly. But from where he was lying, Evan could see the reflection of the whole room. And there she was, standing directly behind him. She didn't move, didn't blink, just smiled. Her lips were too wide. The corners stretched like skin, trying to remember how to be human. Her eyes were hollow, shadowed, but somehow still shining. Not with light, but with attention. Evan shot upright. The cot, SQUELED. He turned, no one, just Nurse Darlene, now side-eyeing him with a frown. "You all right, honey?" He nodded slowly, not trusting his voice. In the mirror, the girl still stood, unmoving. The smile hadn't changed. It hadn't twitched, softened, or gone away. Evan turned back to the mirror. The girl stared right into it, not at him, not through him. Into the mirror, like she lived inside it. Like she only existed there. "Can I use the bathroom?" he asked, already rising. Darlene waved vaguely toward the hall. He walked quickly, nearly jogging, not stopping at the boys' room, but ducking into the janitor's closet, flicking on the buzzing overhead light. There was a small rectangular mirror on the far wall, above a cracked sink. He wiped his palm across it. Nothing, just his reflection. And his headache. He exhaled. Okay, just tired. Just overwhelmed. This whole week had been a mess, until he blinked, and her face flashed behind his eyelids. He staggered back. The mirror didn't change. Still just him. But the image had been clear, her face right over his shoulder, like she'd been leaning in for a secret. He splashed water on his face, cold and sharp, and left the closet. Back in the nurse's office, the mirror was empty again. Or rather, it looked empty, but Evan couldn't bring himself to look too long. There was a strange rule forming in his head, like instinct. If you stare long enough, she might think you want to stay. That night, he covered every mirror in his room, the dresser, the closet door, even the screen of his turned-off laptop, just in case. He slept restlessly. But in the dream, if it was a dream, he stood in a hallway lined with mirrors on both sides. Long and narrowing, a funhouse with no fun. Each mirror had her face, not just standing, smiling, but each smile slightly different. In one, her teeth were clenched. In another, her smile was trembling. One showed her mid-laugh, but there was no sound. Only the hum of fluorescent lights above. He walked slowly, and then one of the mirrors didn't reflect him at all. Just her on both sides. When he woke, his pillow was damp with sweat, and his laptop screen was turned on, displaying the webcam preview, even though it hadn't been opened in the bottom corner. A figure stood in the doorway, just for a frame, then gone. Evan tried to convince himself it was sleep paralysis, or some glitch, or his own unraveling mind. But the nurse's office wouldn't let go. The next day, he returned, pretended to feel dizzy during class, slipped into the cot again. "You get a lot of migraines," Nurse Darlene said flatly. "Yeah," he mumbled. She didn't argue. This time he faced the mirror. Directly, it was dull, still streaked, but now he knew what to look for. Their dot not standing, sitting on the cot behind him, head tilted, smile intact. He blinked, still there. He slowly reached behind him, nothing but air. But in the mirror, she leaned in. Her head moved slightly closer. Her lips parted, just enough to whisper. Except the mirror had no sound. He ran, didn't stop until he was outside. Cold wind, sunlight, the weight of the real world grounding him. That evening, Evan took down the coverings, faced his bedroom mirror. "What do you want?" he whispered. "Nothing." Then something shifted. Not her, him, his own reflection smiled, just slightly, and didn't blink. That night, he dreamed of the nurse's mirror again, but this time, he was inside it, and she was lying on the cot, watching. Part 9. Not all students are students every Tuesday. At exactly 2:41 p.m., someone walked down the east stairwell of B-building. The camera caught it. Every week, same steps, same slow, steady rhythm. Always alone. Always between classes. When? The hallway should have been quiet. And yet, when Evan checked the footage, he couldn't tell who it was. Whoever it was wore the standard hoodie and backpack combo most students did. But their face even when they glanced up at the camera was too soft. Not blurry, just ... unfinished. Like it had been drawn, then erased halfway through. No definition, no eyes, no lines, and they never blinked. Evan found the footage while looking for something else entirely. He'd been combing through old security logs from the school's hard drives, trying to figure out why a number of students were listed twice on the attendance roll. Names like Carla Renz, Maddox Dean, and Elliot Wren. None of those names were in any yearbook. None had emails in the school database, but every one of them was marked present nearly every day. Assigned to classes, even given locker numbers. When Evan visited the lockers, they were all clean. Not empty, clean, like no one had ever used them. And then he noticed something in almost every stairwell. Camera angulus, especially the east stairwell. At 2:41 p.m., he could see a shadow pass behind the windowed door. A figure, always the same hoodie, the same pace, the same eerie stillness in how they walked. He paused a frame, zoomed in, right behind the figure. In the reflection of the stairwell, Glashi was there. The girl, the smile, too wide, too fixed, like someone had pinned it to her skin with invisible tacks. She stood 4 steps behind the student, or the thing that looked like a student. Evan's skin crawled. He flipped through months of footage, Tuesday after Tuesday, frame by frame, every single one. She was there, behind them, never leading, never following, just hovering, like she was part of them. And the names, every name that showed up twice, ... had passed her, walked by her, never stopped, never looked, but they had seen her. Evan was sure of it. There was always a pause, a tiny hitch in their stride. The moment right before she became visible in the reflection, like their bodies knew, even if their brains refused to admit it. Evan asked the front office about the duplicate names. They brushed it off, probably a clerical error. Happens more than you'd think. But he dug deeper. Asked a substitute teacher to check an old archive. Turns out, Maddox Dean was a real student in 1998. Transferred in September. Gone by November. Same with Carla Renz. She attended for 3 weeks in 2004. Dropped out after emotional distress. Elliot Wren. The records ended mid-sentence. It was like someone had started to type an explanation and then ... stopped. Or had been stopped. That night, Evan sat in bed with his laptop open, rewinding the same clip over and over. The figure walking, the girl behind, the slight tilt of her head. Like she could see the camera. No, not the camera. Him. He slammed the lid shut and pushed it off his lap. It thumped softly on the carpet. He sat in silence for a long time, heart hammering in his chest. Then his phone lit up. No number, just unknown. He let it ring until it stopped. A few seconds later, a voicemail notification popped up. He played it, a soft whisper, like breath through a cracked window. "You're not on the list." He dropped the phone the next day at school. Evan walked the east stairwell at exactly 2:41 p.m. He waited, leaning against the cold metal railing, watching the door. At first, nothing. Then dash footsteps, soft, steady, like memory. The door eased open, and someone stepped through. Hoodie, backpack, and no face, just ... Smooth skin, like an uncarved mask. They passed by him without turning, without acknowledging. But as they did, Evan turned toward the small window panel in the stairwell door, and there she was, closer now, smiling wider, eyes never blinking. His mouth went dry. He stepped back, but the stairwell suddenly felt narrower, as if the walls leaned in. He tried to leave, but when he turned back toward the hallway, the door was closed, and in the glass he saw his own reflection. Only it wasn't moving, and it was smiling. Part 10. Don't smile back. They say 3:13 a.m. is the hour when the veil is thinnest, when the world blinks slower, and maybe, just maybe, something on the other side blinks back. Evan hadn't slept in 2 nights. There was no point. Every time he shut his eyes, he saw that stairwell, flickering light above the landing, the chipped paint on the rail, and her, always her. The girl who smiled but never moved, who didn't blink, who didn't leave. But tonight was different. Tonight, he wasn't avoiding her. He was going back. The school should have been locked. It was locked. But when Evan arrived at the back door, it creaked open as if it had been expecting him. No alarms, no lights, just that same faint humming silence that filled the hallways when all the students had gone. A silence too thick for a place made of bells and voices. He didn't bring a flashlight. The emergency lights cast a cold blue haze that made the lockers look like empty tombs. Evan's footsteps echoed louder than they should have, bouncing off the floor and circling back around him, like something was walking in sync. But behind him, he didn't turn around. The stairwell was colder. That same flickering light still danced above the landing. He took the first step, then the second. The wood creaked the same way it always did. He passed the same crack on the wall, same dusty smell of bleach and forgotten shoes. And then, there she was, standing 2 steps above the landing. She wore the same white dress. Her hair still hung in front of her eyes, just enough to cover but not enough to hide that eerie, toothless smile. She wasn't breathing. She never breathed, but she was there. Evan's voice almost failed him. "Why do you smile?" No response, not even a flicker. He stood his ground. His legs trembled, but his eyes locked onto hers, or where he imagined her eyes would be. "I see you in the mirrors," he whispered. "Everywhere I go, even when you're not there." The light buzzed. The silence pressed against his ears, like water rising too fast. He tried again, "Why me?" Still, no answer. But then, her smile twitched, just a little, like it understood, like it had been waiting for him to ask. Evan exhaled, slowly, deliberately, and he did the one thing he had never done before. He smiled back. It was small, hesitant, but real, and she moved just one step downward. Her feet never made a sound. Her arms never swung. But she was closer now, still smiling, still not blinking, still silent. Evan's breath caught in his throat. The light above the landing flickered faster. Once, twice, then off, just darkness. Then flick back on she was. Gone, but Evan hadn't moved. And then, from behind him, warm breath, a presence. He turned nothing. Only the stairwell stretching behind him, empty and dim. He turned back. She was standing inches away, her smile wider. Her head tilted just slightly. She blinked once. Then everything went still. The next day, Principal Reynolds reviewed the security footage after receiving an alert from the system about unauthorized access at 313A.M. The camera showed Evan entering through the back door, walking slowly, calmly. He reached the stairwell, paused, smiled, then he stood perfectly still for 7 full minutes, and then he vanished. No blur, no running, no tricks of the light, just gone. The time stamp froze. Then 313 turned to 314, then blinked back to 313. Again and again. The digital log showed no record of Evan ever entering the building. His name wasn't on the attendance list that day or any day. Not on the class rosters. Not in the yearbook. There were photos, yes, of class groups, hallway shots. But when you zoomed in on Evan, the face was always blurry, like the lens forgot how to focus only on him. When the school counselor asked his classmates about Evan, they shrugged. Who? Some swore he was just a transfer that came and went. Others remembered his locker number, but it was empty, unassigned. The mirror in the nurse's office was replaced the following week. Not because it cracked, not because it broke, but because students complained that someone else kept looking back. Someone who smiled too much. Someone who didn't blink. Evan's mother posted flyers. She stood outside the school, holding a photo that no one seemed to recognize. The boy in the image was smiling. But behind him, just at the edge of the stairwell, while a girl in white, smiling wider.
Hello everyone, I'm Ceoz Stories. Thank you for staying with me until the very last moment. If that story gave you chills, made you jump, or simply kept your eyes glued to the screen, don't hesitate to hit the like button to support the channel. Share this video with friends who enjoy these sensations too, and don't forget to leave a comment with your thoughts, or even share strange things you've personally experienced, because I'd love to immerse myself in your stories as well. If you're eager to keep exploring untold mysteries, shadows that remain nameless, then subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. A new door will open every day. Are you ready for the next story?